Ayo, Ben here, and normally I would not do this this early or this soon after I did another video on this where I give my prediction, but a major media event just happened, okay? And that kind of calls for some reaction, especially one as major as this one actually was. Okay, the Benghazi report was just released. And normally I would say no one gives two shits anymore. But this one, I actually did read. I read a decent amount before I decided to release this. And yeah, I mean, sure, I didn't like Clinton beforehand. And I may have an inherent anti Clinton bias. But there were parts that basically said she did lie, like in blatant quotes, because we knew this was a terrorist attack, yet she continuously pushed the narrative that was based off of a protest, which it clearly wasn't. And to further the point that it wasn't a protest, I mean, look at the date that it happened, September 11th. Okay? If that is not an indicator that it's a terrorist attack, I don't know what is. It's too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence, to put it another way. Um, so this could very well sway independents who aren't all who may be leaning Clinton, because let me put it this way: the American people do not like being lied to, especially when dead Americans are involved. We all saw what happened, or maybe not all of us, but a lot of people saw what happened when Nixon got up and said, "I am not a crook." Um, I just don't see how this turns out good for Clinton. Like, there is no amount of spinning she can do, she and her allies can do, in order to make this positive. I mean, they're already trying to push it on Trump, saying it's Trump's fault. And that makes zero sense because Trump wasn't even a political player in 2012. I just do not see in any way this can be good for Clinton. I really don't. So I'm going to actually move a few places into the safe column. Okay, the first one is Texas. This electoral vote in Nebraska, Georgia, North Carolina, Indiana, Utah, and Arizona. Those states and Missouri. Literally, because of this report, the entire Romney map, all the states Romney has, in my opinion, are completely safe for Trump now. Just because these are, generally speaking, solid Republican states, or mostly Republican states. North Carolina may be an exception, but North Carolina is still in the deep South. It's south of the Mason-Dixon line. Um, it's far away from that Northern Virginia BS. But honestly, I just don't see a way that Clinton can make inroads into this map anymore. I really don't. Another place that I think will go Trump, and Ohio is actually kind of, I don't want to call it a red state because it's very even, but compared to the average, Ohio votes more Republican than the rest of the nation. And I think that actually will give Trump Ohio. Okay, that's good for him. Okay, and remember, I think it's not outside the realm of possibility now that Oregon is actually a true swing state now. I think New Mexico is still going to go blue. Minnesota, I think, is a bit of a reach. New York's a bit of a reach. So is Jersey and Connecticut. I actually saw a poll recently where Trump actually had, I mean, albeit it was a 1-point lead in that second congressional district, but I'm still of the opinion that, like the Brexit polls, the so-called unpopular candidate or the non-establishment supported candidate or decision is underrepresented in the polls because of the supposed social stigma, even though polls are for the most part completely anonymous. But there is a social stigma, and a lot of people, especially on the right, like to fuck with polls. Though I think it's both sides. But, again, I think the social stigma about supporting Trump means that Trump is underreported in the polls. I'm not saying that it's going to translate into votes, but what I'm saying, or into complete votes, but I think he's doing 1 or 2 percentage points better, perhaps even 3 percentage points better than what the polls state. Which would mean he's actually in a statistical tie in Minnesota. But I think that's, like I said, I think Minnesota's a bit of a lift. But I seriously think he's actually going to, that poll in Maine is basically, in my opinion, confirmation that he's going to split the state. Let's go to Nevada and Colorado. Yeah, there was a very old poll showing him leading Colorado, but that was in 2015. I think that's what it's going to be. It is not outside the realm of possibility anymore, in my opinion, for Trump to win Oregon. Though if he does win Oregon, he wins Nevada and potentially Colorado. Or these states are extremely close, and I'm talking a couple thousand votes. So I'm still going to give Oregon to Hillary, just because of Portland. And that's actually the same reason why I don't really consider Washington a close state, is because a lot of the population lives in the Puget Sound area, even though basically the rest of the state from the Olympic Peninsula, once you leave this little area, like even the inner parts of the Olympic Peninsula, and the rest of the state is pretty much completely Republican. They're basically Idaho or Montana. Yet once you get inside of Seattle, it's extremely liberal and basically socialist. I think California, again, is a bit of a lift, though Clinton is acknowledging Clinton actually is going to be going to California after her trip in Oregon today, which acknowledges that she thinks it may be in play, or she's just going for a fundraiser. Either way, this can be interpreted by both sides as Trump is actually serious about making a play for California. Though if he wins California, we're looking at a blowout. Okay, so I don't think anything's going to really change in the West. Whoops. But we've already increased, but Trump has already expanded the electoral map. And in the Republican-leaning 2nd Congressional District in Maine, I think that's going to lead to him winning New Hampshire, because they're very similar states. And New Hampshire has a libertarian lean, again, especially with the Free State Project. I think this actually does translate to votes in Florida as well, in Ohio, and all of a sudden this map looks very doable. Now, yeah, that would still, heck, even, yeah. But remember, I think Trump is polling better, is doing better than it actually shows in the polls. I think this could lead to him flipping Michigan, could lead to him flipping Wisconsin. And we could see a blowout now. And not only that, but I think a lot of establishment Republicans are going to be very keen on driving out turnout in this. But again, I do, I'm going to go ahead and call Michigan for Trump at the moment. Things could change, and they probably will change. I'm also calling Pennsylvania. I think Iowa's also going to go. Again, Des Moines is in this eastern part of the state is the area that often goes blue. But I think he's going to drive out Trump, not necessarily Trump, but anti-Hillary sentiment, especially in the wake of this Benghazi report, which, sure, the Democrats offered a rebuttal, but it's not very satisfying. And again, this is coming from a libertarian who is voting for Gary Johnson, and who, sure, has an anti-Clinton lean, but also does not really care for Trump's policies, for the most part. Sure, the general plan of his is like, okay, I can live with it. Okay, that's the thing, is I can live with a Trump presidency. I don't think I would I'd probably survive a Clinton presidency, but I'd rather not face the curbing and the turning of America into the People's Republic of the United States of America. Because that's basically what Clinton is she is a stepping stone to socialism. She's a stepping stone to becoming the USSR. Because once Clinton has her office, it makes a lot of people complacent because all of a sudden they're getting a bunch of free crap. And of course the rich are paying for it. It may sound great, but you have to remember, then all of a sudden you get Bernie Sanders in implementing policies, and then we turn into Venezuela. Which I don't think anybody actually wants, and yet all these people are trying to say that that's not actual socialism. Well, it actually is actual socialism. But anyway, this is just what I'm seeing right now, and this is, again, in my opinion, the Brexit was confirmation that Trump is underrepresented in the polls. In the Benghazi report, again, I think will solidify the Republican base. And it's also going to convert a lot of independents who aren't already on the Trump train. And again, a lot of independents are polling for Trump. So much so, in fact, that Gary Johnson, the libertarian, outperforms Hillary Clinton among independents. Okay? It's kind of sad, actually, for Clinton. Imagine what it's actually going to look like on election day when a lot of the Johnson voters, or the people who are polling for Johnson, actually vote for Trump. And here's why. A lot of people say they're going to vote for Johnson, but there are quite a few who are probably going to vote for Trump. For two reasons. The first is that not a lot of people have the balls to, inside the voting booth, supposedly throw their vote away. And you also don't have a lot of people. And of course, supporting Trump is not exactly a popular opinion amongst libertarians. As a matter of fact, supposedly, libertarians support Clinton even more, which doesn't make any sense because she's advocating a state that's completely the opposite of what we want. She wants to increase government in everything. Trump at least wants to get the government out of the economy, and is, I'll admit, he flip-flops on gun rights, but I mean, Bill Weld, the Libertarian nominee for vice president, has as well. So, really, and not only that, but also Trump has been pro-LGBT issues for much longer than Clinton has. For much, much longer than Clinton has, actually. So, and I'm using sources from both sides as well as some libertarian sources on this. And libertarians who say they are voting for Clinton don't really understand what they're buying into. They are buying into socialism, which is the opposite of what they want. But yeah, so this is what I'm seeing being the fallout of Benghazi. Now that the House report is released, I'm very well could be wrong on Michigan. But that's what I'm seeing. And for anybody who says somebody's not looking at the polls when they comment, I actually do look at the polls every single time before I make one of these. And I also I throw out a lot of polls based off of methodology, specifically how many people you sample from a certain party. In a lot of the polls sample Democrat +8. Reuters, Bloomberg, and a few others, or even ABC, are even worse than this. They actually poll Democrats at over +10. It was so bad, in fact, that there was one that polled 12%, polled Democrats at 36 and Republicans at 24 as part of their sample. So they were basically polling 150% Democrat. They were polling 1.5 Democrats for every Republican, which is just not acceptable if you want to be trusted. And when I complain about these, the actual percentage of Republicans to Democrats in this nation, is done by Gallup, is a lot closer to Democrats +4. Turnout the past couple of elections, yes, has been a little bit higher, about Democrat +6. And that's because Barack Obama is I'm not going to take this away from Barack Obama, because he was an extremely strong candidate. Okay? He had demographics on his side. He had the media on his side. He had a lot on his side. He does have, even though I disagree with his speaking style, he has a very effective speaking style. It does work. And he is also charismatic enough. Yes, he is very dependent on the teleprompter. However, he rarely has gaffes because of this. So, it was kind of like the perfect storm of what makes a candidate. And again, because I don't want to imply that race was a factor in this, but in some ways it was a factor in how well Obama did. Because if you were a liberal, you could always attack a conservative or even an independent for not voting for him by calling him a racist, even if they had strong policy ideals that disagreed with Obama. And I was a victim of this, even though I said I wasn't voting for the Republican in 2012. I was a victim of this in frickin' Georgia. And to put it another way, another thing is Trump is kind of like Obama was, except without being black and being a little bit uncensored, I guess is the best way to put it. Without a filter would be another. And this is not necessarily a bad thing, because I actually decided to read his book to learn what the is going on in this guy's mind. And he's not an idiot. In his book, he actually says good press is preferable to bad press, but bad press is preferable to the absence thereof. So he's always trying to be in the headlines. And he's kind of doing the Ron Burgundy or the Anchorman thing of 50% of the time it works all of the time. And of course you're like, that doesn't make any sense, but it actually does work. Because he doesn't have to be right all of the time when he says an inflammatory statement. He only has to be right most of, or even half of the time. If he's right enough, people are going to coalesce around him because, hey, he may not be right on everything, but nobody's perfect. So I think this is the map that we're going to see in the fall. I could very well be wrong about Michigan and Pennsylvania, perhaps Iowa. Which, basically, if Trump loses both of these, he can lose Iowa in one of these. Let's see. Yeah, he can lose Iowa in one of these two. And, of course, the more states he wins, the more he picks up. But remember, he only needs to win these states. He can actually lose 3 votes here. So let's... How does he gain 2 extra votes? Okay, so he can lose 4 votes here. But yeah, I'm seriously starting to actually doubt if Clinton can defend against all of these attacks effectively. Especially when she decides to go to freaking California, a safe Democrat state. Which I was going to in the follow-up to the one I released on, I think it was Friday, I was going to follow up and say that talk about Trump's 15-state plan, which is genius in my opinion. But then again, then Benghazi report got released, so I talked about Benghazi report. Anyway, no real changes, except for the fact that things have changed. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Sorry about the little rant in there, but I feel that or not rant, but digression. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time when things change, or next week, whichever happens first. Anyway, or actually probably Friday. I'm gonna try to release these on Fridays. But if reports come out, I may release them as kind of a special one. Anyway, see you guys next time. Bye.